Are you worried that our intelligence agencies are doing the same thing domestically?
Am I worried that, I know that they're not.
They're not manipulating Americans? They're not controlling the flow of information?
Yeah, do you have some evidence otherwise that you'd like to share?
Wow.
I mean...
It doesn't matter to me because I don't have any fucking money to put in the stock market.
Howdy, y'all. I'm Brylan. So you've probably heard the news of Congressman Dan Crenshaw threatening the life of Tucker Carlson. Well, the truth of the matter is that this whole situation is a lot darker than what you could imagine. This is how it all started. Dan Crenshaw, he did an interview with Stephen Edgington. In fact, watch this clip real quick to get an idea of Dan Crenshaw's America Last views. Real quick, would you consider hitting that thumbs up button? You know when you like this video, you're not agreeing with the insanity, but you're helping push it out to more people to help spread the truth.
Just coming back to this $100 billion to Ukraine, I know that people like Tucker Carlson would make the argument that there's a real opportunity cost there. You know, we could have spent that money on the border or fixing, issues in America. Yeah. What do you make of that argument that all this money could have been spent to help Americans and not Ukrainians?
You can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. We spend 75-80% of our budget on a welfare state in America, on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I would love to ask Tucker what he thinks that $100 billion should be spent on, and if he would vote for it as a conservative.
Dan Crenshaw is very outspoken on sending billions and billions and billions of hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine and everywhere else in the world. Really, to continue to line the pockets of these politicians is what's happening. And Dan Crenshaw has shown himself for who he really is. And he has the guts to ask, what should we have done with that $100 billion? America? Stephen said this about their interview. After our interview, I asked Dan Crenshaw if he had ever met Tucker Carlson. He said, I would take his life. Stephen said he laughed it off. And then Crenshaw doubled down and said, no, seriously, I would take his life. This prompted Marjorie Taylor Greene to ask Dan Crenshaw if he really said this. She said, did you threaten to kill my friend, Tucker Carlson? Dan Crenshaw said, LOL. No. And then thine video was produced.
Have you ever met Tucker?
We've talked a lot.
So what you just heard was Dan Crenshaw being asked the question if he's ever met Tucker Carlson. Dan Crenshaw replies with, if I ever meet him, I'd kill him. And then he says, no, seriously. And then he says he's the worst person ever. Now, Dan Crenshaw doesn't have to like Tucker Carlson. That's not what this is about. But clearly, Dan Crenshaw is completely unhinged at this point. And it's not just this. There are other things. Dan Crenshaw has shown himself to be unhinged for quite a while now, and I'm going to show you some video of that in just a second. But Dan's biggest issue is that Tucker Carlson hasn't been quiet on the fact that Dan is an America Last rhino. In fact, here's some clips of Tucker Carlson just shooting straight, just telling it how it is when it comes to Dan Crenshaw.
So, Dan Crenshaw obviously is not emotionally prepared to lead anything, and he's out of control. And I think that he's a really volatile person. I hope he gets help. I mean that. And but he's also a pretty sinister person, I would say, whose priorities are not aligned with his party's voters, but also have kind of nothing to do with the United States. So right. I object. I want to be honest. I feel sorry for Dan Crenshaw. I've had conflict with Dan Crenshaw. I felt like he was emotionally out of control. And so I feel sorry for him. But I also think it's not just him. It's a lot of the leadership of that party just doesn't put the United States first at all. And, they all want to suck up to Trump and America first. Really? Where's the money going? It's not going here. It's going to the countries whose lobbies control you.
Right. Now, Dan Crenshaw has been in lockstep with the Mitch McConnells, the Lindsey Grahams, the politicians who constantly sell out America for their own interests. But Tucker's right here. Dan Crenshaw doesn't put the American people first. He's a World Economic Forum handler. He's a globalist. That's been absolutely clear.
Why is it that Republican states tend to have the least sincere Republican? Like Dan Crenshaw, apparently still a member of Congress from the state of Texas, who is zero interest in the U.S. border. All his interest is in the Ukrainian border, the Gaza border. How does a guy like that get elected in a supposedly Republican state?
Dan Crenshaw's whole shtick is that he served in the military and has an R in front of his name. So he's one of the good guys. And in reality, his voting record, what he stands for, has been in lockstep with the globalist agenda to put America last and really to cripple America so that we are not the leader of the world anymore.
The single most left-wing, truly left-wing member of Congress I've ever met personally is a Republican from this area who has no interest in the United States whatsoever, does not even pretend. I'm not going to name names. Oh, I think that's right. Yeah, it's Dan Crenshaw, the most liberal, most left-wing person I've ever met in the Congress. I'm just being serious. I mean, structurally, how does that happen?
So these are just a few reasons why Dan Crenshaw and Tucker Carlson don't get along too well. But anytime Dan Crenshaw is called out for his sketchiness, he doesn't actually give any type of substance to argue back with. It's always just get angry.
You've been sort of ambivalent about something like that. I did see that a bill did make its way out of committee. Would you vote for a ban on Congress members trading stocks?
Yeah, I mean, this is like number 1,000 on my priority list of things to care about. This is one of those stupid things that I've been dragged through the mud on. You know how much money I've ever had in the stock market? About $20,000. And I've been dragged through the mud on this as if like there's some insider trading. I just sent a letter to Fox News, a threatening letter from my lawyers. There are a couple cases wherein Nancy Pelosi has some very suspicious timing of her trades. Yeah, that has happened. But nobody else can point any other examples out. So sure, yeah, why not? Don't let us trade stocks. How about we'll just keep whipping ourselves. How about we don't make any money either? How about just cut our paychecks? We haven't gotten a pay raise since 2008. Again, what I vote for? Yeah, sure. Who cares? Who cares? Like it doesn't matter to me because I don't have any money to put in the stock market.
So yeah, insider trading never happens within politics. These politicians have a clean slate. Except for Nancy Pelosi having some sketchy moves. Forget about sketchy moves from Richard Burr or Kelly Loeffler, Jim Inhofe, Dianne Feinstein, and the list goes on and on and on. But again, those aren't examples that you can point out because Dan Crenshaw decided that they're not examples that you can point out because they don't exist in his reality. Also, Dan Crenshaw claims to not have any money to put in the stock market because woe is me for working in Congress, which has become a career. Is it a career? It was constitutionally supposed to be a career to be in politics, right? Only Dan Crenshaw knows how much money's in his bank account, but his estimated net worth is about $8 million. But his Congress salary is about $174,000. So it totally makes sense that he has millions of dollars and no money to put into the stock market.
Access to everything TikTok has, which means data on all Americans. And with data and with access to your app that you're addicted to, you can vastly manipulate an entire population, which the Chinese have done.
Are you worried that our intelligence agencies are doing the same thing domestically?
Am I worried that I know that they're not.
They're not manipulating Americans? They're not controlling the flow of information?
Yeah. Do you have some evidence otherwise that you'd like to share?
Wow.
I mean,
okay.
Before the 20...
Any serious questions?
Say fight dance, where to say fight.
Congressman, you asked for an example of the U.S. intelligence agencies meddling in our information. What about before the 2020 election when 50 members came out and said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? Does that count?
No, because they were retired.
They were retired, but the FBI had the laptop for over a year.
There's nothing even close to a TikTok.
Listen to Dan Crenshaw run away with his tail between his legs when he's called out with an actual example that he says, you can't give me any proof that this is happening. He provides an actual thing that happened And Dan Crenshaw goes, no, that doesn't count. Even though Mark Zuckerberg put out a letter himself admitting that he was pressured by the Biden administration to bury the truth concerning co-fraud and the Hunter Biden laptop. All this was Dan Crenshaw trying to cover for the Biden regime and the deep state. And he has walked lockstep with the deep state. Ian Yeager says House Republicans need to immediately introduce legislation to censor Rep. Dan Crenshaw from Congress for his comments today. Totally unacceptable. That wouldn't be such a bad idea. It would hopefully get Dan Crenshaw off the backs of Americans. And, he's done so much damage to this country and pretends to be one of the ones fighting for what conservatives stand for. I find this psalm encouraging. This is Psalm chapter 37. Look at verses 5 and 6. It says, commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. With the Lord on our side, with the Holy Spirit leading us, we can be led into righteousness, and we can have full justice, whether it be on this earth or when we are standing in the presence of the Lord. But hey, let me know your thoughts about all this in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, join this community. I would love to hear from you on a regular basis. And please, hit that thumbs up button. When you like this video, it'll get pushed out to more people, and it would really help spread the truth. All right. I'll see you in the next video.